Hey everybody, my name is Brennan. I'm one of the co-founders of Wholesale, and this is one of our weekly webinars where we talk about new features in Wholesale or existing features in deeper dives. And today we're talking about kind of SKU updates, but I'll get to that in a second. For folks that are going to watch this as a recording, I like to do a little bit of a brief walkthrough of what Wholesale is and what it does. So we're going to get right to that. So for folks that don't know, Wholesale is a serialized inventory management system, and it's designed specifically for people that are buying and selling used cell phones or used mobile devices, things like tablets, watches, wearable devices. And sometimes people use it for laptops as well. So Wholesale kind of fits this niche of used electronics resellers because it has support for things like IMEI scanning, IMEI fulfillment onto e-commerce orders, IMEI based audits, so you can audit the inventory that you're receiving when you're buying a batch of devices. You can scan those devices to make sure you got all the devices you needed in the right conditions. We've got inventory statuses so that you can kind of map your pipeline in your business of how you process phones, receive them, repair them, and resell them exactly to the process that you have in your business. And then we have these e-commerce integrations that are becoming ever more popular. So you can connect Wholesale directly to e-commerce channels like Swappa, Back Market, and eBay, and then to other channels through services like Shipstation and Sellbrite to bring in orders from all the different e-commerce channels that you sell on. And that's kind of what Wholesale is rapidly becoming, is a serialized order fulfillment station for folks that are reselling used devices. So, and we also have business integration. So one of the unique things about Wholesale compared to other inventory systems is we've got integrations that I'll talk a little bit more about, but especially one with Phonecheck. So Phonecheck is a diagnostic service provider that allows you to plug devices in via USB, get all of the data from the device, the model, the manufacturer, the color, the capacity, the carrier, and to do functional tests on the device. So they have an app that guides you through doing a functional test so that all of your technicians are testing devices in the same exact way. And their software integrates to Wholesale, so you can bring all that data over to Wholesale pretty easily without having to do those manual tests yourself and enter that information into a spreadsheet or what have you. So that is what Wholesale is and why it's really, really designated for folks that are buying and selling used devices, and maybe better than whatever other kind of generic inventory system or even serialized inventory system that you're using or have seen before. So that's Wholesale. So I talked a little bit about our e-commerce integrations. This is them in a nutshell. So we connect directly right now to Swappa, eBay, and Back Market, and Sellbrite. So Swappa, eBay, and Back Market are all channels, but Sellbrite is a multi-channel service, kind of like what Wholesale is becoming. And so Wholesale has an integration with Sellbrite. So if you're using Sellbrite or familiar with it, or you have any of that you're using the channels that Sellbrite supports and you want to use Wholesale, but Wholesale doesn't have direct native support, you can connect Wholesale to Sellbrite. Wholesale will sync your inventory with Sellbrite and bring in orders from Sellbrite, and Sellbrite will talk to the other channels that you might want to be selling on. So that's what our Sellbrite integration does. And Sellbrite is a paid service, so we suggest that if people are willing to use it and really want to be able to bring different channels, the orders into Wholesale and the listing quantities to be synced up. But ShipStation is a pretty cheap service that we really like, and we integrate with them for shipping. We also have an integration with them that brings in orders from any of the channels that you can get into ShipStation. They can pass through ShipStation into Wholesale. So that's a neat feature for anybody that is wanting to get other channel orders into Wholesale. They want to get WooCommerce, BigCommerce, Shopify, etc., things that we don't have direct integrations with yet. You can bring all those orders through ShipStation and into Wholesale. And then we're working very, very aggressively on integrations with Amazon, Walmart, and Shopify. Anybody that watches these webinars frequently knows that I've been mentioning these a lot over the last maybe 6 months. And the reality is that these integrations are just tricky. They take a lot of time to get the specific details of the channel figured out to make sure we're doing everything right. And then these days, these channels kind of require almost like an app approval process. So they require integration approval from the channel, and that can sometimes take a while. So some of it is a little bit out of our hands, but I'm very excited to say these integrations are coming pretty soon. I've been seeing, Mike and I have been seeing kind of the preliminary work to launch these integrations being done, and I know that they need to go through an app approval process, but then we'll be able to talk about them once they're live and in beta testing stages for customers who are beta testing them. So those are coming soon, and we'll have direct integrations there with Shopify, Amazon, and Walmart, as well as Swappa, eBay, and Backmarket, which we know will open up wholesale to a bunch of resellers that are selling on those platforms. So those are our e-commerce integrations. Our business integrations, I mentioned the one about Phonecheck, bringing in specific device data into wholesale. That is, one of the things that wholesale is clearly specific for in the niche of device resellers. We also have an integration with Quickbooks for syncing your invoices and your purchase orders over from wholesale to Quickbooks, so you don't have to double create them on either side. And then we have an integration with Shipstation that's just a standard shipping integration. So any order that's in wholesale can be sent to Shipstation. It can be fulfilled, not fulfilled, excuse me, but shipped in Shipstation, so you can create a shipping label, and that shipping label and information will come back to wholesale. And if you're shipping an item on an e-commerce channel that wholesale's talking to, wholesale will send that tracking number back up to the channel as well. So those are our business integrations. We've got a host of features. I won't go through them one by one today. What I want to do instead is talk about background SKU changes. And that's also my next slide, is doing a deep dive into background SKU changes. So we've got a handful of different features that are all, some are basic and serve the purpose that most other inventory apps would serve, like sales orders, purchase orders, invoices, etc. But wholesale serves a lot of very specific use case features that are for device resellers, like RMAs, processing RMAs and indicating why a device came back on an RMA, doing IMEI scan audits, having processing workflows when you're unlocking devices or repairing devices, adding costs of repairing a device to the device itself. All of this stuff that folks that are buying used devices and reselling them need to do in their business and want to track. Those are the things that get lost when you're just using a spreadsheet. Those are the things that wholesale does. But let's hop in and talk a little bit about SKU updates when devices are bulk edited. So I've got a couple screens here that I want to show you and talk about. So what I mean by SKU updates when devices are bulk edited is wholesale kind of abstracts this ability to update the SKUs of your inventory as you move inventory through your workflows and through your process. And that can mean a lot for a company that's processing a lot of devices, like a big warehouse where what we see typically with a customer that is doing a lot of devices in a warehouse, one of the most common workflows we see is a customer will receive their inventory. They'll kind of place an order for a PO, and they'll put that information about the PO. So their supplier or vendor sends them a spreadsheet of the devices, but it's not full information. It's just got the make, Apple, the model, iPhone 10, and maybe some details. It's got, they say that it's unlocked, but they're not quite sure. They say that it's grade B. Everybody says everything's grade B, but you need to figure out what that grade actually is for your business and for your customers. And so what we'll see wholesale customers do a lot is when they create their PO, they'll add a bunch of inventory to the PO that they got from their supplier, but it's basic information about that inventory. And then the inventory comes, once it's received into the warehouse, it goes through a grading process, and maybe a grading and cleaning process. And in that grading process, the technicians figure out what grade the phone actually is, or the device actually is, for your business. Because grading is subjective across each business. People try and make it as standardized as possible, but it's still a little bit subjective. And you don't want to just take a B grade device that you bought from your supplier that might be C grade as far as your customer is concerned, and just not look at it and pass it through. So there's this specific grading process. And what we see a lot of customers do in this grading process is they'll take 100 devices and they'll grade them, and they'll enter the grades into one system or another. They'll run all these phones through Phonecheck, so they do functional testing and they put the grades into Phonecheck. Or they'll just go through, literally they'll have 100 phones in bins, and they'll grade all of them, and they'll say, okay, this one's B grade, this one's C grade, this one's A grade, this one's B grade, and go through them like that. And then they go into wholesale and they want to do a bulk update. So they use a process batch. I'm looking at my process batches over here. So they'll create a process batch to update the grade on a batch of devices. So they'll scan all the IMEIs into wholesale, and they'll do a bulk action, and they'll change the grade. and update the grade. So we could update all of these devices here to C grade, and we'll save it. So this is just kind of simulating that workflow. So say we had all these devices, there are a bunch of iPhone 6s in here and some iPhone 10s as well. And we just updated them to C grade. So if we refresh, look, now they're all C grade. So the idea here is when you make a small update like that, the beauty of WholeCell is that it manages the SKUs for you in the background. And one thing that you'll notice that kind of exemplifies this is these iPhone X's, before I changed them to C grade, there was a SKU on them. And I'll do this again and change them back to B grade so you can see this. So we'll change them back to B grade. And when we change them to B grade, it's going to show a SKU because we have a SKU in our catalog. There you go, BM Test SKU 3i. We have a SKU in our catalog for this variation of product, where if it's an iPhone X, it's an unlocked 64 gig silver A1865, and it's B grade, and there are no damage conditions. So this is how I'm encapsulating this SKU updates in bulk. So when you use another inventory system, if you want to make a small change like changing the grade across 500 devices, that's actually a dramatic change. You have to go and find the SKUs for all of those devices, and you have to find what SKU they're currently in and what SKU they should be in, and you have to update the SKU. And so you have to change the entire, it's like you have to change the entire model over from one device SKU to another device SKU. But in WholeCell, that happens for you when you change any attribute about the product itself. Whenever you change any attribute, if we changed all these iPhone 6s to 64 gig, that would change the product variation. If we change them all to C grade, obviously that changes the product variation. If we add cracked glass to them, that changes the product variation. And in WholeCell, product variations, this is where I've got them listed out. So if you go to your product catalog, these are your product variations. They're a combination of the product details, like the manufacturer, the model, the carrier, the capacity, the color, and the variant. But it's the product details as well as the grade of the device that you attributed it to, and the conditions. So cracked glass, bad Wi-Fi, bad LCD, et cetera, bad Face ID. So since the product variation is a collection of those things, we can go into the product variation and look at it. And we don't happen to have any inventory of this, but we've applied this SKU to that product variation. So I'm not gonna say this is an easy or simple process, but for sophisticated customers that have a lot of inventory, a big warehouse, managing a catalog is already something that they've had to do with other systems, so they're used to it. But what's unique about WholeCell is you just manage your catalog once. And then when your technicians are going through and updating devices in the receiving process or the unlocking process, when you're unlocking, say you receive a bunch of AT&T devices and you unlock half of them, maybe some of them couldn't get unlocked, but some could, and you unlock them. Now, in a traditional inventory system, you have to go update all the SKUs to whatever the unlocked version of the SKU is. However, in WholeCell, that tester can come in on a process batch, go up here, go to change product. We can change the network to unlocked, and bam! All of a sudden, we now have instead of having to go and search and hunt for the SKU for every various product in this process batch. I'm not going to do this because I don't want to make that change right now, but we can just make a change of a specific attribute, which I think is what something that folks in the device industry really understand, is changing a specific attribute rather than changing the entire SKU. Again, if you're doing this over hundreds or thousands of devices, the more devices that you're doing it across, the more impact that it has for you. And so that can make a really significant difference as you go in and process devices. This is kind of the update that I wanted to show you guys, but then I'll pop over here too to just show, we looked at these iPad SKUs. This is the SKU and the product variation for this iPad. And what you'll notice is everything about this iPad, about the product, should be the same on these two tabs. So on this one, I've got Apple iPad 2 GSM unlocked, silver gray. I think this one's also silver gray. Yep. So the only difference, the product is exactly the same. You can see when I go back and forth between tabs, the product here is exactly the same. But the one thing that's different is the grade. the grade is one is a B grade and one is a C grade. And so what's, and these things have two different SKUs. So again, in the example that I'm giving, what you'd be able to do is if you had a process batch full of these items and you changed the grade specifically, not the product or the SKU. You didn't have to go in and make a SKU change, but you're just changing the grade. That would, in the background, Wholesale would change the SKU for you. And the reason that that's powerful is once you get Wholesale set up and connected to your e-commerce channels and wherever you're listing your inventory, you've probably got your listings connected to your product variations via SKU. So you're using a SKU to connect the listings. And so if your technicians, for example, go in and change a bunch of devices from B grade to C grade, that is the end of their work. They don't have to go to the e-commerce channels. They don't have to go to eBay and back market and make these changes. Once you make that change, if you go into a process batch, change 50 devices from B grade to C grade, their SKUs will change automatically because you're changing a major part of the product. But you don't have to you don't have to do a SKU change. You're just changing the grade or the carrier or the gigabyte capacity. So you just make one change like that when your testers do a test that updates the product. And then it ricochets, or not, maybe not ricochets, but it permeates all the way through your e-commerce channels and where you have your inventory listed. So making a single bulk edit over here where we'd go in and we'd change the grade, for example. Maybe I'll stick to changing grade because that's a simple and digestible idea. But say we changed all of these to C grade. And what you'll see is right now, the reason that you don't see a SKU after we change to C grade is these iPhone 10s that are showing on my screen here that have a SKU. We just don't have a SKU entered for the C grade version of this particular model. So if we went into our product catalog and applied one, when we made the change to C grade, what we're going to see now when we refresh, once these grades are changed, is those items that had a SKU, they just don't show a SKU now. But that's because the product variation has changed. And if we had a SKU for that product variation, the SKU would have been updated. And if we had e-commerce listings for those SKUs, on the next time that Wholesale syncs every 10 minutes or so with the e-commerce channels, they would all be updated with the correct quantities now for what we have available. And that's it, guys, in a nutshell. That's kind of if you're running a huge operation where your testers are changing things all the time, they're regrading things, they're receiving RMAs, and when you receive an RMA, somebody said something was C grade instead of B, so you change it to C. That's the end of the line. That is the end of the management cycle. As long as somebody's, keeping what we like to call a disciplined product catalog, where you've got all your products, the various grades, and you've got SKUs applied to them, and you have your listings connected to your SKUs from your e-commerce channels to your SKUs in Wholesale. As long as that's being managed, then all your technicians have to do is stay in their lane. They can focus on just changing the attributes and making the device attributes true and correct in Wholesale. And they can leave notes as they do that. They can even show the history of why they're making those changes and why they're doing what they're doing. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That's my full overview about these SKU changes in Wholesale. And I see we got Lee from Phonecheck on the call. Hey, Lee, nice to see you. And Raymond, nice to see you both. I think you probably both joined a little bit into my demo here, but if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. Hey, Lee, I'll read questions off the chat, and I can go through anything else today. I'm kind of focusing on these SKU changes, but if that wasn't clear for you guys, feel free to ask clarifying questions. And if there's anything else that you want to see in Wholesale, I've got a window open so I can see. So Lee says, I wasn't able to join at the start. When are you doing your next one so you can get penciled in? So I do these every week, Lee. So I do them every Friday at the same time. So it's 8 a.m. Mountain Time, 10 a.m. Eastern. And so you can join next time. Hopefully 8 a.m. Mountain is good for your time zone. And then, yeah, we've got Catalina also. Nice to see you. Nice to see you on the call. I didn't shout you out earlier, but if anybody else has any other questions, yeah, feel free to share them now. If not, I'll wrap things up in just a second here. And thanks for coming to these. We always appreciate it. And I may even do next week a similar rendition on this one. And because I really like this topic. We've got a couple of power users of WholeCell that really benefit from this ability to have their testers just change specific attributes of a device, have that put the device automatically in WholeCell into a different SKU bucket, and then have that update all of their e-commerce channels. We some of our customers, I would bet, really use WholeCell because of that ability. And if you're using WholeCell though for a smaller quantity of devices, you might not know that it has these capabilities. So that's why I like to share them and talk about them on these webinars. So we may do a rerun next week with a more thorough, maybe more thorough slides or more thorough something of this specific use case. So, well, if that's it, everybody, got no questions yet. So we just did our feature deep dive on SKU updates when devices are bulk edited and how that works. That was my demo, so I'm not going to do a demo now, but if there's any Q&A again, Naftali says, I use it and it's great. It keeps everything automated. Thanks, Naftali. We really appreciate having you as a customer. For folks that aren't a customer that are on the call, you can start a trial via that link that's on the screen, WholeCell.io/trials/new. We give you a 15-day trial. If you want any extra time, just let us know that you were on this webinar, and we'll give you a little bump in time on your trial. Excuse me. We just want to make sure that WholeCell is the right fit for you and for your business, and we really like to help you do that. And to that extent as well, we have our support email right below it. Mike and I are on support Monday through Friday. Mike's on Eastern time. I'm on Mountain time. So we cover about a 10-hour stretch. And yeah, our goal is to help you figure out if WholeCell is the right fit for your business and what it can do for you. So any questions that you have, feel free to send us an email. We'd love to help figure out your workflow and what makes sense and kind of really be there to hold your hand and walk you through what are the right ways to use it, how should it be set up and configured, and then let you off on your own. But thanks so much for coming, guys. Have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Take care.